How is a Quranic verse determined to be abrogated? Neither God nor His Messenger, peace be upon him, has designated any verse in the Quran as an abrogated verse. So, how else can we know? The key argument that was used in the classic literature was that the scholars perceived a conflict between two verses in the Quranic script, such that they cannot both operate. Hence, one of them must be abrogated. There is sometimes other evidence to corroborate the conflict-based argument, but perceived conflict is the key ingredient in all abrogation claims. Since perceptions vary, this criterion is subjective, whereas if God or His Messenger, peace be upon him, has designated a verse as an abrogated one, the criterion would have been objective. Instead, all claims of abrogation have relied on evidence other than explicit divine designation. As a result, there are hundreds of these claims. The book counted 432 of them. And almost every book about abrogation has a different list of what the author considered to be the abrogated verses. Not only that, but there is not a single verse that is claimed to be abrogated on which all pro-abrogation scholars agree. Any perceived conflict between verses depends on how the verses are interpreted. So one interpretation may highlight a conflict, while another interpretation may reconcile the verses. The vast disagreement about which verses are abrogated is illustrated in Appendix 2 of the book, where the list of abrogation claims and the number of supporters and opponents for each claim are tabulated. Here is an example of disagreement about an abrogation claim based on whether a conflict is perceived. Before the explicit prohibition of alcoholic beverages in verse 590, the earlier verse 443 was revealed, which said, translating from Arabic, "O you who have believed, do not approach prayer while you are intoxicated until you know what you are saying." Those who saw a conflict with the explicit prohibition verse, 590, argued that the earlier verse, 443, implies that alcoholic beverages were allowed, except that you should not drink them before prayer time. This would mean that this verse was abrogated when the explicit prohibition was mandated by the later verse 590. Those who do not see a conflict argue that verse 443 says nothing about whether alcoholic beverages are allowed or prohibited. Rather, the subject of the verse is whether praying while intoxicated is permitted. Nothing about whether intoxication is allowed. This is one of the most famous abrogation claims in Islamic literature. In summary, 1. There is no verse in the Quranic script that has been designated as abrogated by God or by His Messenger. 2. Perceived conflict between verses is the basis for all abrogation claims found in the literature. And 3. There is not a single verse that is claimed to be abrogated on which all pro-abrogation scholars agree.